Guys, let's go. Let's go. We're late, man. All right. We're gonna do a jump cut, so it's faster. Okay, you ready?
Let's go.
All right. 1, 2, 3.
4, 5.
This doesn't work. We have to jump at the same time. You ready? 1, 2, 3. We made it to the. Where's Eber? What the hell? All right, so for the longest time, we've thought about how to make glass or transparent enclosures breathe. And that's what Lian is trying to solve here with the Lancool 4. It follows the traditional layout where all the side panels kind of can open and they swing. But what is the most interesting aspect here about the new Lancool 4 concept is this integration of 3 fans at the front. They're 140mm fans and they're directly integrated into the glass. So it gives you this opportunity to reveal the hardware inside. It gives you this curved glass edges. And the curved glass edges are actually pretty smart because they slim the enclosure that is otherwise quite wide. And they are proprietary fans. Like you can remove this entire front panel and there's just like a few pins at the bottom that pass both the power and the RGB to those fans. And because they're rounded, it gives off this kind of a speaker vibe. Everybody who's seen this thing thinks the Lancool 4 looks a little strange. So I would love to hear your opinion. The idea is to give glass some breathing room, and because the concept of trying to reveal a little bit more behind the motherboard. So this glass is exposing the motherboard tray, and so the graphics card is going to be slightly more visible. It's going to reveal a little bit more of the interior. And Eber, if you can come over here, this is actually a really good example of where this enclosure might be helpful, because we have a very massive GPU in here and the graphics card is already quite large, and so is the case. And I was saying that we probably need something bigger in there to kind of highlight the entire concept behind something that is all glass on both sides and at the front. So would love to hear your opinion about the new Lancool 4, about those front fans. The basic idea is making the glass breathe, and I think Lian is onto something here. I'm not a huge fan of this prototype immediately, but I would love to see the final result, I guess, sometime later, you know? But I'm actually more excited about this, the O11D Mini V2. There's several reasons. Number one is that they've made the case slightly bigger, only 2 liters bigger, so it's both wider and taller to accommodate something that is actually very interesting, because this is one of the smallest fish tank enclosures that can support an ATX motherboard, a 360 AIO properly, and check this out. At the back, what seems to be just a regular SFX or SFX-L cutout for the power supply, but because we have this extension on the side panel, you can actually mount a full-size ATX power supply. So it will extend right here. Here's the bracket, right slightly wider than the enclosure, but because the side panel is wider, it will accommodate that. So it's actually a really smart way to integrate better hardware compatibility. You don't have to worry about the length either, because the extension on the side panel with the mesh is long enough for, I would say, like even 200mm fans. 200mm fans. I'm talking about power supplies, Eber. And on the interior, so there are a few interesting changes. Number one is that we have a slanted bottom intake, obviously for improved airflow and also some aesthetic elements. We have a vertical GPU bracket that's built into the PCIe area at the back with this very interesting GPU anti-sag mechanism that gets installed on top of the fans, and you just kind of raise it like this and it will support the GPU, just so that the back of this vertical card does not sag. And that's actually very clever, because most of the time we have really good support at the front, but if there's nothing supporting it at the back, especially because we have fans installed there. And so Lian is introducing those solutions directly with the enclosure. And also, if we come take off the top panel, we have a very, finally, a nicely removable fan bracket. Eber, give me this. Eber, give me this screwdriver. So we finally have a removable top bracket. So because we have a very compact enclosure anyway, you would install your ATX motherboard. And if you are mounting a 360 AIO, everything has been offset. Oh, there's 2 more? Okay, everything's been offset very, very close to the side panel without interfering with the glass panel, of course. And that would mean that you can install everything outside of the case and mount it back inside the frame. 4 screws, bada bing, bada boom. And look at this. A really nice bracket for 360 support or dual 140s, of course, you can kind of decide. And even though what appears to have not enough, like say, legroom or height room above the motherboard, it is going to support a 360 I/O just because we have such a good offset of that fan closer to the side panel. And both me and Eber were like trying to bend this corner and it's really, really strong. So they done a good job with that L mount here, just to give us a little extra rigidity on this side. It's not going to be flexing or bending. And of course, the motherboard is BTF compatible. And so the biggest thing here is a very, very compact enclosure that is both a fish tank look, it's ATX compatible, 360, and also an ATX power supply at the back. The last interesting element here are these hard drive caddies. So normally you can install like an SSD or a hard drive in there, but you see this meshed element at the top that can compress into the drive caddy. So originally, sometimes people stash cables in there, and that would mean that you can still utilize that as a functional element inside the enclosure without needing to remove it. You stash some cables, you compress this mesh thing, and there you go. That way you have cables that are not gonna just simply pop out. And I think that's a very clever integration of something that's already available and people are using and doing beforehand. We also have this clever support bracket at the back for our 24 pin that has some height adjustment. So when you exit the 24 pin cable towards the motherboard, that bend can be properly supported over here and it's not going to sag. Clever. The O11D Mini V2, love it. And the best thing, so $89 for the enclosure without fans or $99 for a case with 5 fans. So it's gonna have 2 fans on the side and 3 at the bottom for intake. I would say that's a fantastic price for a segment that's highly saturated, but not saturated enough when it comes to the compact spaces. So well done, Lian. Then there's the second case where they're trying to make the glass breathe. This is the Lancool 217 Infinity Edition. So really cool infinity design around the perimeter of the glass, but very similar airflow intake with those big, I think these are 160 millimeter fans at the front, and they're positioned to have better GPU and CPU cooling, so like that hybrid approach. Because I was saying like there's a bit of a spacing gap that's not equal from the top and the bottom, but it's actually intentional, as they say, for better ventilation like you would find on the original 217. Review of that coming hopefully very soon. But the Infinity Edition is just trying to follow the same concept like we see with the Lancool 4 of trying to make the glass breathe. So let us know what you think, because that's also kind of in the concept stages so far. Just would love to hear your opinion. And then we have the Den Case B4. It's a micro ATX enclosure that can now go vertical. So the vertical accessories that you need to use to convert it to a vertical stand are included with the case, which is awesome. This is the case foot, which is at the bottom, but it's exposed. So once you install 3 120mm fans, this is going to deliver extra airflow for our GPU because the GPU is right behind there. And I personally love the exposed look, especially on the side that you can notice a little bit of the RGB illumination and the infinity mirror cap. And they're a little bit unsure whether or not to leave it exposed. So let us know what you think of this approach. But otherwise, the Den Case B4 at $99, going to be, I would say, a pretty popular micro ATX option if you're wanting something that looks premium, that can go vertical on its own. And they're not sure if they're gonna keep the side panels aluminum just to hit that price point. So I think the side panels are going to be a different material, but still full ventilation. And yeah, it's going to support ATX power supplies too, regular graphics cards, and in vertical orientation, because of the additional height, you will be able to mount a 360 radiator. So that's gonna be awesome. Of course, it's have a little bracket on the side for your traditional horizontal mount if you want to mount a 240 radiator, but that can only be possible with an SFX power supply. So lots of options in the micro ATX space and actually fairly affordable. All right, so that's it for cases. Now let's go to Michael to hear about power supplies and some pretty awesome cooling options too.
So one of my pet peeves when I'm doing a build is how little innovation there's been in power supplies. And I'm not talking about different types of connectors or cables or the lengths. It's the fact that nobody has made a lot of inroads to make power supplies more adaptable for accessibility when you're doing your build. So to fit into different builds and understand that you might want cables in other locations. And that's where Lian's RS series really comes into the equation. This thing is like the transformer of power supplies. So first of all, you have your standard modular connector plate right here, but you're gonna notice that there's one thing missing. There's no 24-pin connector. That has been relocated to 2 sides. You can choose the side that the 24-pin exits. Now that is usually one of the hardest to route cables. And to make your job even easier, what Lian has done is added a rotatable input power connector. Now what that does is it allows the power supply itself to rotate, so the connectors that you need are in a location that is more easily accessible based on your build. And since this is completely square, its compatibility is with a wide range of cases. Not only that, what they've done is that in order to properly direct airflow, once you've rotated it, they've allowed you to install a side plate to lock that connector in place and also direct that airflow towards the critical components and make sure it doesn't escape out one of the sides. A couple of other things that they've done, this is sort of like, that's not it, there's more going on here. They've added magnetic cable guides that you could pop anywhere on the power supply and you can route your cables along those. Of course, these can be added to anywhere in the case and they can be added to the cables as well. White power supply, white cables, thank you very much. There is actually a modular USB hub that can be installed right on the power supply. Now, for the higher end models, this is going to come as part of the kit. On the lower wattage models, it will be optional. We're gonna continue down here, and the Hydroshift series is getting an update to the Hydroshift II. Just to brief you very quickly on what this is, it's a very unique way to route the tubes to be close to the most critical area of your build. So you don't have to worry about these massive tubes coming out and messing up the aesthetics of your build. So what they've done with this model is they've changed things up a little bit. So a little bit higher performance, a couple of optimizations, but there's also hardware presets in here, so you don't need software to be messing things up. What they've done is simple: rotate to select what your screen has. So there's a couple presets in here that are hardwired. Those cannot be set because they're part of the firmware. Then if you rotate this wheel the other way, you can cycle through various lighting options. The only thing that I think is a little bit limiting is the LCD. Well, it only shows your water temperature and your pump RPM. There's no CPU temperature, there's no ambient temperature, things like that. But you know, it is what it is. If you want that information, you just have to load the Connect 3 software and deal with all of its issues. Next thing I wanted to talk about is just an entry level to their wireless fan lineup, and that's the Uni Fan CL Wireless. And look, Lian is investing very heavily into this wireless ecosystem of theirs. It's still a little bit touch and go. We're not convinced it's going to permeate very, very quickly because there are some challenges involved. We've had some issues with it as well. But anyways, the CL Wireless is inexpensive as far as these wireless fans go. So it starts at $17. It goes up to $55 for a triple pack. There's a new mechanism that, I hate the sound here, to disconnect the fans and reconnect them is very, very simple. It's just like a push to connect and they're connected. It still has that same Uni Fan connector on it, but it's just the way that the fans disconnect and reconnect to one another. That's been simplified for a less expensive fan. Then finally, they're taking this wireless thing to the whole new level. A lot of people told them, they're like, look, your wireless fans, they still need wires, right? The only thing that's communicated wirelessly is the data for the RGB or the RPM level and things like that, right? It still has to be plugged in. Well, they went completely wireless. No wires whatsoever. They've integrated for the first 6,000 customers, I think, who buy a triple fan pack of the new SL Infinity Wireless. They've integrated a power bank. Supposedly lasts from like 10 to 15 minutes, but hey, there was literal memes of these supposed wireless fans, and Lian said, look, we're gonna play that up. Anyways, that's it from Lian. I'm Mike with Hardware Canucks, and I'll definitely see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.